The topic assigned to me is the anticipated direction of open and distance education in the region. I think the reason why this topic was assigned to me was because of my involvement in Asian Association of Open Universities, in ICDE, and the roles that I am playing until now, especially leading the AAOU's accreditation board until the end of this year. So let me now begin my presentation. Okay. So when we say anticipated direction, it means to say that there are some basis somehow. We are anticipating something because there are observations already. There are things that we are seeing at the moment which will make us anticipate what's next to come. So in this presentation, I will be focusing on the current trends, what we are seeing now in the education's ecosystem, especially here in our country. Okay? So with the hope that in our discussion, from this presentation, from our interaction, from the discussion that will follow, hopefully we will be able to develop or even look into a possible University of the Future framework. As early as 2019, UPOU has been discussing that. What exactly will be the framework for the University of the Future? So let's take a look, let's see what are these current trends in education that can be the drivers of the future. Okay, so my outline, just two main topics, the 9 trends. So I have listed 9 trends in education, and I know that many of these trends will be familiar to you. And again, my last slide will be the proposed University of the Future framework. It is also my hope that in the process of this presentation, the discussion, you will also be able to reflect your university's context and be able to assess where you are now. Okay? So let's begin. So the first, we are all aware of this, the COVID-19 pandemic experience. We have experienced this either as a teacher, as a university administrator, probably the younger ones, as students. So even in my class, I would ask my students, how was your experience? Either as a teacher, as a university administrator, as a student during the COVID-19 pandemic. But what the major thing that I observed when we were interacting or networking, dealing with the universities during that time is this. Of course, we know this, universities were forced to embrace online learning, and now, because of that experience, many of these universities are looking at online learning as another business model, okay? Because they have that experience. They say, okay, there is a possibility that we can continue, and some of them are indeed continuing to offer programs and courses in the distance mode of education. It is also because many of these universities, or almost all of them, made investments to make online learning work. Yeah, they sent their teachers to training, not physically, but training online. They partnered with many other universities so that their teachers will be enabled to teach online, investment on gadgets, connectivities, etc. So those investments, somehow, they are looking at how else can we make these investments, the training of our teachers and even the planning, etc. How can we make them work continuously for the university? So that's another factor. And the third, of course, and we know this, we at UPOU, we have experienced this, how empowering can a flexible learning environment can be, right? if you are not tied up to a flexible schedule, you have to go to a specific venue. So some teachers, some students now prefer the flexibility afforded by online learning. So that's the first, our COVID-19 pandemic experience. Of course, it's not just the pandemic that we have to be worried about. There are many disruptions to our learning. Okay? We have experienced it during the pandemic, but there are other disruptions that we often experience. Natural disasters, calamities, flood, typhoons, volcanic eruption, earthquake. And recently, just last year, we have this postponement of classes, cancellation of classes because of extreme heat. So what did the universities do? Cancellation, classes tomorrow, cancel, shift to asynchronous learning. At that time, I would always ask administrators, what are your teachers doing when you cancel classes like the night before? What are your students doing when you say asynchronous learning? Do you have LMS where your students can shift to that platform so that they can continue learning even if you cancel your courses? So no direct answers can be given to me when I ask those questions. So that is something that universities, academic institutions will have to consider. We have to have that system or plan wherein we can ensure the continuity of the learning. In some other terms, they would call it business continuity plan. Third factor, of course, we have a very good discussion on this yesterday. Artificial intelligence, immersive, and other digital technologies. Yesterday, we have heard Dr. Halao explaining, showing to us how artificial intelligence are now impacting education, how teachers are now using it, how students are now using it. In this publication, it says, higher education landscape is undergoing a significant transformation fueled by the rise of artificial intelligence. AI empowers machines to perform tasks traditionally requiring human intelligence, and this transformative power is now making its way into universities, addressing a crucial need, supporting student success in an ever-evolving learning environment. In 2023, I conducted a simple research involving my students. I asked them, how would you feel if your teacher is using an AI-enabled teaching assistant? Surprisingly, many of them favored the use of AI-enabled teaching assistant. Why? One physically challenged student said, then I would have a 24/7 assistance from a teacher. It doesn't matter what time I will consult the teacher because the AI would be available to answer me. And I would not have to wait for the teacher to wake up, etc., to be available to respond to my queries. One student answered, then probably the teacher can devote more time to developing assessment, etc., and not be bothered by questions that can be answered by an AI-enabled teaching assistant. But what is interesting here in this data that I am showing is this one. I'm not so sure how clear this is. The 4.8%. This 4.8% said that in 3 years, graduation rate will increase by 4.8%. 3 years after implementing an AI solution. I hope we will be able to see this figure in the graduation rate at UPOU probably next year because we started implementing something on AI 2023, 24, 25, probably by next year. So this is something that we can look into as we consider using AI or integrating AI into our education ecosystem. Trend number 4 is on micro-credentialing. There are many things, of course, here at UPOU, I've been known to champion micro-credentialing. When I ran for my 3rd term as UPOU Chancellor, one of the priority programs that I included in the direction that I would take is on micro-credentialing. And this is not a simple micro-credentialing of just simply unbundling courses, but it's more of really looking at what the industry needs. What the industry needs and meeting the needs of the industry in terms of the knowledge and skills of the manpower that they would need. But at the same time, micro-credentialing would also look into the possibility of stacking these credits into macro credentials. And this would give them the additional value for the lifelong learning engagement. It's not just completing one course and then completing another course. It's having a pathway towards earning a macro credential by completing this series of micro credentials. So we always would like to look at it as taking your lifelong learning into the next level. So that's one, addressing the manpower needs of the industry and catering to the lifelong learning needs. The rise in the gig economy, especially in the IT industry. And of course, as I have mentioned, the framework of micro-credentialing is anchored on the values we place on academic degrees. You're not just earning short course certificate, certificate of attendance, certificate of completion, but if you follow a certain pathway, there is a possibility that you will earn a macro credential. Okay? Number 5, the aging society. Asia is graying rapidly. Probably in the Philippines, we have not yet experienced this. But in some of our neighboring countries, they are already experiencing this. So let's take a look at these numbers. Close to 9% of Asia and the Pacific's 4.3 billion people are now 65 years and older. Population growth has decelerated amid low birth rates, while people live longer and healthier. All of these are translating to a steep increase in the proportion of older adults in Asia. Kasama na po ako doon. When I made a presentation in Shanghai, I was invited by the Shanghai Open University last year to make a presentation on how open distance e-learning can help the elderly, the senior citizens. And then I realized when I look at their statistics, they are already the workforce is already dominated by the senior citizens. So it's really becoming a problem to them, and unless they do something towards reskilling the elderly population, then they would soon have a problem with their workforce. So by end of 2050, people 65 years and above will comprise 18.3% of total population in the region. Okay? And then another slide on this. Currently, at least 1 in 5 workers belongs to the age bracket of 55 to 64 in 7 economies. These are Hong Kong, China, Republic of Korea, Singapore, 21%, with an average workforce age of more than 40. And as I mentioned earlier, by 2050, 13 economies will have an average workforce age of at least 40. So, notable rise in countries such as Bangladesh and in Laos, People's Democratic Republic. Trend number 6, the push for universities to do its university social responsibility. We cannot just be focused on doing teaching, doing research, and public service is one, but there is something that is also expected from universities, and that is for us to perform our social responsibility. In the current or in the past years, universities are being looked at in terms of its contribution to the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay? In fact, there is such thing as impact ranking, wherein we are being evaluated in terms of our contribution to a specific Sustainable Development Goal. So, like for instance, at UPOU, we always say that we are contributing to SDG number 4. But then what else? What other SDGs are we contributing into? Okay? Are we contributing to the reduction of poverty, climate change, etc.? By how much? So this is something that universities are also expected to do. Our social responsibility, not only building knowledge, graduating students, but something that will also contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals with the framework that education is at the center of each of these SDGs. I mean, you cannot you cannot work towards climate change if you do not understand something about it. So we'll have to start with education, with educating people. Then by this, the expected result is that by understanding how these things work, then they will be able to do something and contribute towards the achievement of these goals. Trend number 7, the changing profile of the learners. 3 years from now, higher education institutions, and I think many of us here are part of a higher education institution. 3 years from now, that's 18 years and above, we will be welcoming the first batch of the generation Alpha. And this generation, they are the digital natives. They are those who grow with Alexa or Siri in their command, with artificial intelligence, just asking Google or Siri things that they can search or they can read, but they can just ask their mobile phone answers to questions that they have. We also have to take note that some of those belonging to this generation have experienced their first years of schooling during the COVID-19 pandemic. So that's how they experience education. Their experience using digital tools, digital gadgets, etc., will shape how they will learn in higher education. So what kind of delivery of instruction shall we provide to this generation? If we are not looking at the profile of our learners or the learners that we will be welcoming to our universities, and that's very soon, that's 3 years from now, okay? Generation Alpha, those who were born between 2010 and 2024. Trend number 8, there is now the increasing emphasis on quality and accreditation. I think you've heard of it. Earlier, during the panel discussion of the CODEP, where are the CODEP members, there was our colleague from MMSU was saying about the AUNQA framework. So, or accreditation, they are looking into how they can be accredited by AUN. And yes, AUN is one body, accreditation body. And if you have that, somehow, you have that seal of quality in your program, in your institution. So it has become increasingly important now. In online learning, we have many quality assurance frameworks already. And in fact, I have always recommended these QA frameworks to our colleagues who often ask me, what QA framework can we follow so that we can say that we have something that is internal, guiding us in developing our courses or implementing or delivering our online programs. AAOU has recently announced the availability of its accreditation services. So that's from the Asian Association of Open Universities. We also have to take note, I think I also included here, yes, the Quality Assurance Online Learning Toolkit of APEC. So the one from APEC is something that was produced or a result of a multi-country collaboration. So we work together, open universities, different universities from different countries. We work together starting 2017. And it took us 2 years, in fact 3 years, before we were able to finalize this toolkit for APEC. The one for AAOU, the instrument that we are using for the Asian Association of Open Universities, we started working on them in 2019. And it was only last year that we were able to finalize the whole instrument, the evaluation instrument, the whole process, etc. So it also took us that long to develop these frameworks so that we can use them to really evaluate the quality of programs and institutions. I also included here the ISO certification because even for universities, somehow, we're also being required to undergo this ISO certification. I know because Vice Chancellor Saludades is also working on this for UPOU. I think DINPAT is also working on this for Tacloban, the ISO certification. So even ISO certification is very relevant to our context. Now for the last the ninth trend, it is very important that we be part of our community of practice. We need to learn. I mean, just like what we're doing now, we need to hear what others are doing. We cannot live in isolation. If we are to develop, if we are to progress, then we have to interact, we have to be part of our community. There are national communities on online learning, distance education. Earlier, CODEP, the Consortium of Distance Education Providers in the Philippines. We have that already for the Philippines. For Asia, we have the Asian Association of Open Universities. International, we have the ICDE, which you can consider to be member of. So be part of the community of practice because we need to share, we need to network, we need to collaborate. One example that I can also share is how at AAOU we encourage inter-university collaboration. So you can do research with other member universities, you can be an exchange fellow and learn from other universities with expenses, part of the expenses paid for by the host university. And it can range from 2 weeks to 3 months. I think the longest is 3 months. So you can learn by observing how other universities are doing it. So collaborate, research collaboration. The Asian Association of Open Universities is also funding research collaboration among member institutions. So it is something that we can get by being part of the community of practice. Okay? So given what we've heard, what we have seen, what we have experienced as the trend, as what is happening now in our education ecosystem, we can look at a possible framework for the university of the future. I have listed here, anchored on the basic principles of sustainability. First is being agile and being flexible. We should be able to handle or face disruptions. We have experienced that during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are experiencing that during natural calamities. So we should be able to immediately shift learning deliveries. We should be agile without the quality of education suffering because of that shift. So we have to be agile, we have to be flexible, We should be able to handle learning disruptions. We should be inclusive and accessible. Our delivery system or instructional delivery should be ubiquitous. We should be able to integrate the universal design for learning and even the web content accessibility guidelines, even just the basic features of UDL and basic features of the web content accessibility guidelines. Let's try working on that so that we can make our courses, our programs, the information that we share more inclusive and accessible. We should provide or offer relevant content and learning program design. I put here as an example the micro-credentialing and the cutting-edge programs. We cannot be content with what we were offering years ago. For all we know, the content of our courses may already be obsolete. So we should have that strong partnership with the industry, with those who are looking at our graduates as potential manpower for our workforce for this industry. So let's always have that in mind. Project what the industry needs, project what would contribute more to the economy of the country. And of course, very important, our programs, our courses, the way we are delivering instruction or education should be quality assured. Of course, there may be other things that we can think of which should be part of the framework of the university of the future. But probably these are the basic things, basic components of a sustainable framework for a university of the future. Now, as my last question, is your university future ready? So I put here the figure that we've been using when we're trying to evaluate ourselves, UPOU, do we have the essential components? Do we have the essential features of a university of the future? And it is a work in progress, I would say. There are things that we are still trying to put in place, but the more important thing is that we know what we are aspiring for, and we are working towards those aspirations. So I think that's my last slide. Thank you very much. And if you have something to share, contribute, please do so. Again, this is something that we can discuss probably out of the discussion that we will have. Then we can further enrich the framework, and all of us will benefit from this framework. So thank you very much. Thank you.